Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
Wednesday is sponsored by Jim Beam. The official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild are here all season long. Listen every Wednesday through March for your chance to win tickets.
Let me get to some texts that have come in related to our early discussion on the tragedy over the nation's capital that ended about as badly as one could possibly believe. And I asked for perhaps texts from people who have some experience with air traffic control, et cetera. And some good texts have come into the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That number continues to be 64686. And, of course, as luck would have it, every once in a while when you try to scroll down to earlier texts on this line, it does not allow you to go very far back. The last one it allows me to get to is from 334. So now so the little wheel is turning around and around and around like it's. So I'm hoping those will load because I had 2 or 3 really good observations that I wanted to make part of the conversation, but unfortunately,
I can come in there and try to fix the computer.
Yeah, if you want to try and see, usually it'll go back as far as you need it to, but for some reason today it's just sort of low. It's hesitating. So, in the meantime, there is an Associated Press report without a lot of detail. Breaking staffing was, quote, not normal in the air traffic control tower at the time of a midair collision near D.C. An FAA report obtained by Maybe that's what I got to do. Obtained by the Associated Press. So, and one of the texts, I'll go ahead and thank you. I'll just read. Maybe that was the issue that I was logged off and didn't even realize it. One of the texts that I had was directly related to that question. In fact, the individual was asking that I not use his name because he believes it's kind of a ticklish situation. So let's see if I re-sign, if indeed we can get down to a couple of those texts now that I did exactly that. Yeah, here we go. No, I'm not going to use a name here. I'm an air traffic controller here in the Twin Cities. ATC is incredibly short-staffed nationwide. There's up to a 3-year training process after getting initially hired, and only about half actually get certified. Tough hours and schedules. The operation of pointing out the traffic and instructing them to pass behind happens hundreds of times daily, even around here. There's always more than you think you can do after the fact. The safety record, like you said, has been great, but a lot of things had to go wrong all at the same time for last night's events to happen. And so when I saw that AP alert, I immediately hearkened back to what he had sent and found it very interesting regarding the staffing issue. Now, again, does that mean that had direct impact on what took place last night? Not necessarily. But we're all looking for clues. It'll all be part of the reportage and no doubt part of the story as well. When VFR helicopter acknowledges the regional jet in sight and maintaining separation, the helicopter accepts separation responsibility. That comes from a 29-year major airline pilot. Thankfully, the government is cutting as much regulation as possible, as quickly as possible. That should turn out really well. That's from Jeff in Richfield. Aerospace engineer guy checking in. The FAA has such an impeccable safety record in large part because the regulations are, quote, written in blood, end quote. This incident will add another chapter to the regulations. Unfortunately, this is the most reliable way to improve safety. I've heard that cliche a couple times last night, that indeed, sadly, that some of the biggest improvements and changes are often written in blood, and that may well be the case again. I have to believe, though, above and beyond that, there might be serious consideration to saying we are not, when it comes to this particular military training, this is not going to be a route any longer. We are eliminating this route this close to a landing path where you're literally, the regional jet in question was only, I believe, was like 400 feet, maybe 450 feet. And again, a couple other people have confirmed what we talked about earlier, that the altitude that that military helicopters are supposed to maintain, they're not supposed to be they're supposed to be much lower than 400 feet as well, which then gets back to what are the tower's responsibilities, even as they say, hey, you got to watch this plane, get behind that aircraft. Even if that's legitimately communicated, should there be a little bit more of a desire also to demand an altitude change so the two, the helicopter and the aircraft, in this case the American Airlines regional jet, are not at the same altitude for sure. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is, as always, as I said, 64686. I thought I had one more. Is that pilot saying that the civilian aircraft and the military aircraft are sharing communications? Everyday people can listen to military communication? I never pondered this before, but it makes me wonder now. That's Babe from Inver Grove. Brandon writes, the helicopter ceiling on that track was 200 feet. Why was it at 350 to 400? That's going to be one of the very fair questions that probably is already being asked as well. So we're obviously not that many hours into this story. So there's no question that there'll be plenty of opportunity for a lot of these questions. Well, we know they're going to be asked. And I think most of these questions are legitimate. I think they're fair questions to ask as it relates to the specifics of this particular case. And we'll continue to mix in conversation about this. I do want to get to some toy department stuff later this hour. In addition, a nice visit with Sam Mitchell to talk about the current state of the Minnesota Timberwolves. A couple other things about the National Basketball Association. The Wild had a big victory last night. They rebounded nicely on the road. It was really good to hear Louis on we're, of course, the radio home. We love the fact that we are the flagship radio station for your Minnesota Wild, but it's also a good chance Louis on this 4-game trip. So on TV, on the FanDuel, whatever it's called these days, used to be Bally, Louis was on the call, and you could tell he was enjoying himself yesterday with a good performance from his favorite professional hockey team, at least since the North Stars, the Minnesota Wild. A chance again to put $1,000 in somebody's hand. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The fan wants to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword bonus at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword bonus. Enter now at KFAN.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now, save 50% on the new Sleep Number Limited Edition Smart Bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
Get ready to experience the raw energy of 9 Inch Nails live. Trent Reznor and the band are hitting the road for an electrifying tour you won't want to miss. Catch them at XL Energy Center on August 17th for a night of unforgettable music and intense performances. Tickets are on sale right now. Get all of the details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
You know, there's the ongoing challenge, one of the few challenges when it comes to the professional football powers that be, to make the Pro Bowl or Pro Bowl weekend into something that people are more interested in paying attention to. They've given up on the game itself for all the obvious reasons. Nobody really wants to tackle. Nobody wants to get hurt. So it's really kind of farcical to try to play the game, to pretend you're playing the game the way the game is supposed to be played, because pretty much then you would have, well, the score wouldn't be that different than like at the end of the first quarter of the NBA All-Star game. It would be like 80-70, right?
Right.
So, you know, now we've got, I think, some skill stuff. We've got flag football competition. And look, it's harmless. It's fine if you're kind of intrigued by it or kind of interested by it. But for me, there's no, if I have, well, I'll put it this way. I have zero interest in watching a Pro Bowl football game because of the direction it has gone in. I have exactly the same percentage of interest in a flag football Pro Bowl game. It does zero for me. Nothing. I'm not mildly curious about, well, somebody's skill. You see some skill out there at least, and some speed because they know they're not going to get killed. Does nothing for me. I'll find something in the abyss, probably outside the world of sports, or maybe it'll be college basketball, or it'll be something else. But I don't have any interest in any of it. Where are you?
Oh, yeah, no, I would rather watch any. That's like one of the few things I won't bootleg. Yeah, I have plenty of other things to do besides watch that. Maybe, it wouldn't really necessarily make sense, but maybe they should do it in the middle of the summer or something when we're all starving and thirsty for football. Because, I mean, we've had some great games over the season. I don't need to see none of that.
Does nothing for me. And, you know, all sports, I guess maybe the baseball All-Star game to a lesser degree, but certainly NBA All-Star game. And this year, you see, I think, what we're doing there, right? I think it's now it's 3 teams, and then there's the 4th team's going to be is that the up-and-comers? I think up-and-comers, right? I think
that's the case, yeah.
Or is it
whoever wins the Rising Stars
Yeah,
game,
maybe that's what it is. And so why do we think that creating more games, is going to make it more interesting to people if the approach is going to continue to be we're not going to guard anybody because we just don't think it's worth the trouble? Then I guess I don't understand why it's going to look better because now you've divided it up that way. Who was it? It was, I think it was a current player who offered up a hell of a a comment about this, just basically said, here's my idea. Let's go East versus West, just like we used to, and let's summon up just enough interest and energy to kind of, let's play 52% instead of 22%, right? I probably would take that at this point, which is sad because that really doesn't say much, right? Not really very helpful. Speaking of veteran players, let me see if I can find it here. And it got a lot of attention last week. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it, where did it go? Oh my God, I thought I had it. Now let's see, what's Monday? Well, it's got to be, I'll find it someplace else, but it was I don't want to give it away too much because then it's lost, but it was, it was worthy, I think, of the bumper-to-bumper seal of approval, and it was an attempt, I think, by a veteran NBA player to put in perspective a number of things that where perhaps a number of players have sort of lost that, for sure. But I'll save some of that as well. 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. The texts continue to come in fast and furious. Pro Bowl stuff is a waste of time. What if we just, regarding all these All-Star weekends, my suggestion for years has been, let's not bother with any competition. Let's make it about, it's a weekend of fun for sponsors, for the muckety-mucks, for the beautiful people. You show up over a weekend. Maybe there's a few parties where you can, rub elbows with some of your favorite stars, and you don't even bother. And maybe you have some of these parties on a court, but you literally have no athletic competition. You just don't even pretend, have no pretense of athletic competition, and just make it about, a celebration of the sport by, here's where we will reward all our $3 million, our $5 million a year sponsors, our $10 million, whatever it is, and just say, we're not going to actually, this is a break from the actual games that we play, because really we're all worried about injury, and we can't convince anybody to play anywhere. Again, you're too young to maybe know this, or maybe you would know this because you pay attention to history. My youth, All-Star games, NBA All-Star games, Pro Bowls, the competition was actually legitimate. Now, you could say that might be insane, that it was crazy they did it that way because of the possibility of injury, although I don't remember anybody, suffering an ACL injury in the Pro Bowl. I'm sure it's happened. But once upon a time, that was actually the case. And I just don't think I don't even blame, with all the money at stake, players and teams for saying it's just not worth it. But that's why I say don't even bother trying to come up with a substitute, because I think the more you do, all I'm reminded of is how far away this is from what used to be at least legitimate or semi-legitimate competition, exhibition worthy, but nevertheless, I think worthy of paying attention to.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's just too much money at stake these days, and that's kind of the case with a lot of things. That's why NBA players are so coach speak during interviews, and that's why we don't get this same level of competition. I remember being a kid and seeing Kobe wanting LeBron to guard him in the All-Star game and actually trying, pride and ego and all of that stuff was at play. And Michael Jordan really wanted to try hard in these All-Star games. I remember watching back from the other ones. It was intense, and I'll never forget Sean Taylor absolutely leveling a guy during the Pro Bowl when I was a kid, and we're just never going to get that back. And like you said, I don't know what the solution is. Clearly, neither do the execs of any of these leagues, because none of these All-Star games really matter. Baseball is the only one that's probably closest to being the same, but it feels like every dunk has been dunked at this point. Yeah. Nobody really cares about the Rising Stars game. And I mean, the 3-point contest is okay when I thought it was that new little wrinkle of Steph Curry versus Ionescu last year was great, but with no Caitlin Clark in the mix this year, it looks like it's going to be the same old. So there's not really any solution. Maybe, like you said, doing some type of media, getting unparalleled access to some of these guys that we don't usually get to hear from all the time, and having them interact with legends. I don't know what the deal is, but it seems like the competition has kind of fallen by the wayside, and we're just killing time until we officially get rid of it.
And again, I don't want to do the old man lecture on it and say, back in my day, they tried hard, and that's what you guys should be doing. I've given that up because I understand why you probably can't adhere to that same standard, although, as you say, there were actually some players more recent, I think, who wouldn't mind adhering to that standard, I think they get beaten down by other players. But then I'm just saying, well, let's just strip the whole thing of any pretense. Don't bother with it then. Don't try to come up with a substitute. Just say it ran its course. Now we're doing kind of an exhibition party weekend where we're bringing a bunch of people together. Maybe we'll do a couple of concerts, and maybe we'll get a couple people out on the court to horse around a little bit. But none of the rest of it makes any sense to me. This was from, I'm sure you saw this. This was from last week. I think it was last week, maybe the week before, from your guy, the Greek Freak. Did you see the comment he made when I think the Bucks had a difficult, quote unquote, travel day? And it sounds like Jackal was trying to give him the excuse if things didn't go particularly well. And I just can't get enough of what Giannis had to say. If you have already heard it,
chance to see it. No.
If you've heard it, as some of our audience may have, I forgive you or forgive me, but it's worth mentioning again, probably once a week for like the next 5 years. Throughout the day, I was just trying to stay locked in. This is not the toughest conditions that I've played basketball. The only difference is that we had to take a flight. At the end of the day, if you call this adversity, I think the team responded very well facing this adversity, that we had to take a flight for 2 hours before the game. At the end of the day, we still woke up in a 5-star hotel, had breakfast, sat down as a team, talked as a team while we were waiting for the bus. We had a pretty nice bus ride, and we went to our plane, charter plane, private plane. Everybody has their own seat. You can order some food on the plane. Get some fruit if you want. They have drinks, too. After that, your cars are warm right in front of the plane waiting for you. You get in your car and you get to the arena in 15 minutes. And after that, you do your routine and you get ready for the game. For me, these conditions are really not all that bad. I've been in way worse conditions in my life. But if you want to call this adversity, I'm very happy and proud of how the team responded. Even though we did all that, we were locked in and came in here to win. How brilliant is that?
I mean, that's amazing.
Oh, my God, it's so good.
It's so refreshing to hear that from a player, to just keep it real. Because I feel like a lot of players would have given you the coach speak like, yeah, we had to battle through adversity. And
correct.
You didn't have to storm the beaches of Normandy to go play a basketball game. You rode a plane. It's really refreshing to hear that, especially from a superstar.
I got it. I read it the first time about a week ago. Then Guardsy sent it to me, and I had already seen it, and I intended to get to it last week. We might repeat it, like I said, once a week, because it is so good. It's so understated, too. What I love about it is, okay, if you want to call this, we'll call it adversity if you want. But, I mean, all seriousness here, how with a straight face can we even begin to say what we're dealing with is adversity, especially in 2024? Bottom of the hour pause now. Sam Mitchell in about 1 hour. And when we come back, I've got some more texts to read on a number of different subjects. And I want to revisit a story that Max and I touched on briefly yesterday because it's getting more attention. And I want to particularly bounce off of the angry words of an NBA coach regarding this particular suggestion. So all of that coming up on the other side of the 4:30 pause.
Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
We talked briefly yesterday about the words of the NBA commissioner about, I think it was on the Dan Patrick show, about the possibility of the NBA reflecting what I think is the norm internationally, moving to 10-minute quarters instead of the conventional NBA 12. I wasn't offended by it. Part-time guy Max, I don't think you were either.
Nope.
But now, not surprisingly, the Jackals are asking coaches about it, and they got some pushback. Tibbs, I don't think was militant, but just said, I think our game's fine. We just need good competition. I worry then about records, and I would say don't do it. Mike Malone, who can fly off the handle, we've seen that actually during that playoff series last year, said, I want nothing. I don't want to. Let's not turn this game into a circus. What are we going to do? We're going to have a 4-point shot. We're going to do this and that. I don't think this is complicated. You can put me in the camp that says a 4-point shot would be stupid. I think that's where you start the circus. But I think bright basketball minds could say, I'm not offended with the idea of 10-minute quarters. The other stuff, I don't think that's that gimmicky, I guess what I'm saying. No,
me neither.
The idea that you're kind of just making a mockery of the game with all these changes. Well, okay, then how about you just stop at that one? Forget the 4-point shot. Forget some of the other ideas that have been thrown around. I don't know. Now, I mean, we all know that really the most sensible thing to do, even more than shortening the game to 10-minute quarters, would be play 65 games a season instead of 82. But we're not stupid, are we? We're not naive. That's never going to happen.
Never.
They're not going to lose that revenue, right?
I don't even think they would go from 82 to 80.
You might be right. So that ain't going to happen. So isn't this actually more realistic? If in the real world sense, I'd have no problems. Again, I haven't thought. I tell you, I've thought it through really hard. I understand in terms of the records, it changes everything. But I don't know. And NBA records, are they celebrated to the degree like the long time, some of the baseball records were? I don't know. I just don't think it's that. I mean, football records, look how much that's changed. We've gone from the football I grew up in, I think it was 14-game season. Then we go to 16 games. Now we're 17 games.
Right. We're
going to go to 18 soon, right? And eventually we'll probably get to 20. That wouldn't be all that surprising. And so records, you could say, well, those records are thrown awry, right? A lot of those records, rushing, total yardage in a season or receiving yards in a season. So I would absolutely consider it, because what I think what the commissioner's thinking about, all right, then in effect, you're probably closer to a 2-hour game, right?
Yeah.
2-hour, 5-minute game. And in 2024, maybe that's better. And maybe that does help with load management better. Maybe it does make it more of a sense of there's not going to be as much lag time within a game. That's pretty tight. Does that make it harder to mount dramatic comebacks? I guess it would. But I'd entertain it. I don't think it. I don't know that the game needs it. I think I don't think the ratings are going that badly that you need to rehaul the game. But I kind of might like the urgency of that, the feeling of, boy, we got to get in and get going here. This is it. Let's move. There's not a lot of time. Whether there's actually any momentum for it, I don't know. Now, cynically, there's probably some season ticket holders out there saying, well, I like that idea too, but am I going to get some money back? Because instead of 48, at its best, 48 minutes of action, I'm getting 40 minutes of it. But you still want me to pay the same, or you want me to pay more? There's probably some season ticket holders would say I'm not getting bang for my buck in that regard. But if there's a sense that what you're getting in those 2 hours or those 10-minute quarters is actually more compelling, even if it doesn't last as long, ultimately what do customers want? Did we feel good about our experience tonight, right?
Right.
So I think Malone is getting too paranoid. Again, if you add 5 or 6 other gimmicks to the 10-minute thing, yeah, I tend to agree, but I don't think having discussion about just how long the game goes, I don't think it's all that radical a concept.
Yeah, I think it's slightly ridiculous to compare it to making it a circus when literally the NBA is the only professional basketball entity, as far as we know, that does 12-minute quarters. That's almost the gimmick, is that we have 12-minute quarters compared to the rest of the world who runs 10-minute quarters. And I do agree with you, as we talked about yesterday. I think there's a chance of it lessening injury, which obviously plagues a lot of NBA teams and kind of puts a fork in ratings for particular markets. But interestingly, on the Power Trip Morning Show this morning, Corey looked it up. Mm-hmm. The average NBA game is only about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's true.
As it is right now.
Yeah, it's not ridiculous now. You're right.
Yeah. So, and I get we've talked about it before, but people's attention spans are shrinking all the time, little smaller and smaller and smaller every single year. So I get that Adam Silver might be trying to get ahead of it, but as it is right now, I don't find myself usually. No. I mean, nobody likes the last 2 minutes of a game when it takes 30 minutes to get through 2 minutes, but. in general, I don't ever find myself being like, oh, I can't wait for this game to be over. This game's too long. That doesn't usually happen with the NBA.
Certainly compared to baseball, you're right. And baseball, I think, has done a good job. I think that's I was 100% in favor of the pitch clock. I wanted it 5 years before it started because what I despised was, again, I grew up on baseball, and what changed over the decades, what changed dramatically, I think, from the 60s and 70s to really the 90s and beyond, was the internal clock that I think most professional players had disappeared. The internal clock was, okay, I get it. There's no clock out there, but I can't get in and out of the box 7 times. I can't readjust both gloves, both knee pads, my crotch, the whole bit. If I'm a pitcher, I can't take that much time. It's a bit disrespectful, I think, to everybody. If you're a pitcher, quite frankly, to your fielders behind you. Tom Kelly used to talk about it all the time, that he always felt that the defense wasn't on his toes when the pitcher was too deliberate. It's like, just get up there and pitch. And so once upon a time, I think players understood there are limits to how much we can milk the delays that are allowed in the system. But then eventually that went away. And where players said, no, I'm going to take as long as I want. The old Chuck Knobloch bit literally was he would step out of the box between every pitch. He would literally check every elbow pad, his helmet on his head, and it got ridiculous. And so to me, that begged for the Major League Baseball to step in and say, you guys can't police yourselves anymore. These games are getting longer and longer. We got to do something. And I think even Rocco was in this studio. He thinks it's been a smashing success. He actually thinks players have adjusted to it better than he thought they would have, and that to a certain extent it has helped them create for each of themselves individually a better rhythm in playing. And it's much better for the fans. A lot of time has been shaved off of baseball. May not matter to the kids, but it's still better. There's a texter I wanted to get to here regarding college football. Made changes a couple years ago to try to shorten the games, like ending the clock stoppage after every first down. It did shave time off the game, but it did not shave time off the broadcast, since they just filled it with extra advertisements. NBA would be the same. Shorten the games, but make up for it with longer commercial breaks. Zero gain for the fans from a game flow and pace of play standpoint. Well, that's probably a point you have to at least talk about. Are you going to have more commercials to make the money? And will that defeat the purpose of the fact that you have 2 fewer minutes in each quarter?
Well, and I'm sure that's what the NBA's main, and the PA, right. That's what their main gripe is going to be, is are we going to be making the same amount of money, especially when they're already kind of in a panic over their ratings right now.
One of the guys on Dan Patrick this morning said to make it 10-minute quarters, change the 2 and 3-pointers to 3 and 4, so the scores would still be about the same. I'm not going to 4-point plays or 4-point shots. I don't know about you. I don't need that. I'm
not interested.
And now we can adjust. Either. There's a lot of discussion. Some people believe that what needs to be eliminated are the threes on the corners, that they're too easy.
I've heard that.
I might listen to that too. I might consider that. I haven't thought that through. But I don't need to get to where it's almost like you got these bands of, okay, this is 2 points, this is 3 points, this is 4, and this is 5. Then you are getting, I think, you are turning it kind of into a sideshow.
Yeah, then it gets gimmicky, kind of like recently how we heard that baseball was considering that stupid-ass golden bat rule. Come on.
Yes.
That is Savannah Bananas type stuff right there. And I don't think it's necessary for the NBA right now. There's other rules, global rules that they could adapt that could make a difference, like perhaps no 3 seconds in the paint. Obviously, offensive interference is a thing that FIBA plays differently. So maybe they could make those changes first before considering radical change like this. Or maybe their ratings are down simply because there's 5 million different places that you have to have subscriptions for to watch games. Well, and more people are just bootlegging now.
I think also some of that in the NBA, and this is where they've got the money in their pockets already, so they shouldn't panic over this. There's a transition again about, okay, some of your most hardcore box office stars are aging, or they're on teams that aren't as relevant, right? I mean, Steph Curry is still Steph Curry, but his team is becoming borderline irrelevant. So who's the kid in Oklahoma City? Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's absurd. Yeah. I mean, he's an absurd player, but I'm still not sure if you did the popularity game, what his numbers would be. I think it'll come, especially if they end up making a run and winning a title. But the league, to that extent, is in transition, and they're so accustomed to certain players ruling it, right? LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant, who still, can play, but is aging, whatever. Those are the names we've heard over and over again. And I think, the Anthony Edwards of the world that are coming on. Anthony's got, is in every other commercial now, it seems, but it takes a little bit of time to do that. And as much as people complain about the same old faces, the ratings indicate that that's who they gravitate towards. It's like there's already it's the same issue to me. There's already a new poll, Democratic presidential prospects poll for 4 years from now. And all it is name recognition.
Right.
It's about, the most recognizable names are at the top of the list. I don't think most of them have any chance to be a factor, but because people remember those names, they're at the top of the list. And I think that's part of the NBA story right now as well. I want to get back also to the a topic today related to the Washington, D.C. Collision and plane and helicopter crash as well. There were a number of texts that continue to come in from people with varying degrees, I think, of experience that I wanted to mention. Let me see if I can get to some of the best ones there. The common thread, I will just say, through many of them from people who say they have experience with air traffic control work, is that the staffing issue is legit throughout the country. Now, again, does that mean automatically that contributed to what took place in Washington? We don't know. It might, but it's times like these that then we ask the larger questions, which I think is why this is a worthy conversation to have. Example, this is actually a quote from a New York Times story that's online right now. The controller who was handling helicopters in the airport's vicinity last night was also instructing planes that were landing and departing from its runways. Those jobs typically are assigned to 2 controllers rather than 1. That may well end up being a significant factor in this case. That is a New York Times story, too. My guess, only the helicopter crew called traffic in sight, most likely was calling the 737 on final for runway 1, was unaware of the traffic to runway 33. Helicopter route also should have been over the east bank of the Potomac, not over the middle of the Potomac. Tower controller should also have told the helo to stay north of the center line of runway 33 until the CRJ landed. I don't know how true that is. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but also I think worthy of discussion. Another individual who identifies himself as a current commercial airline captain based on the East Coast. ATC staffing in the DCA, that's Washington Reagan Airport Tower, and Potomac Approach have been abysmally low. ALPA, that's the Airline Pilots Association, has been screaming for years that this wasn't a matter of if, but a matter of when. The circle to land on runway 33 will probably be banned after this. Well, that's the other way they could go. I'd mentioned the possibility of the training missions, that pathway being simply eliminated because of all the airline traffic. He's suggesting maybe the circle to land on runway 33 itself, that's another way they could go. They could ban it. The interesting thing about air travel in that part of the country is that I don't know how many. Look up what year Dulles Airport was established in the greater Washington, D.C. area. Because that airport, which I've flown into dozens of times back in my travel days.
Looks like 1962.
Okay, 62. The whole point of that, originally, that airport, as I understand it. In fact, Mary Schiavo was on CNN today, a former big shot in the air traffic world, transportation world, made this point that originally that airport was built to eliminate DCA, the closer in one. That was the whole idea, because it was further out. The area was going to be less congested, and to a certain extent, it'd be safer. But you know what? It's not as convenient. So you got politicians, many of them, who literally commute to Washington between their home state and Washington every week. And guess what they prefer? you're in the belly of the beast. You go right into Reagan, into DCA. You're right there. You're maybe 10 minutes from wherever you want to go. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. And so I think over the years, despite the idea at the front end when Dulles was built to eliminate that airport or to lessen traffic there, traffic's gone nothing but up there because so many people are invested in it. And even though deep down they may know, it may not be the safest, you see, well, how many times has anything bad really happened? Not that often. And so I think actually the numbers have gone up at that airport because of its proximity to all the centers of power in the nation's capital. That's, I think, a significant part of the story. Be interesting to hear you read the air traffic controller's reaction. I married into an ATC family, subsequently meeting several more ATCs over the years. I've noticed a common denominator among them, especially when you get them talking about work. Despite being federal workers, there's a governmental distrust as well as a streak of conspiracy theorists. Well, there are some conspiracy theories out there that are not backed up with any reality thus far. No credence that you can easily find on the internet at this point that it was a deliberate act. And there's 5 or 6 of them that are out there already that make absolutely no sense, but they'll be out there and they'll stay out there, and we'll just sort of have to, hold your nose and not necessarily worry all that much about it. More texts, a lot of good texts today on that subject, that really sad subject, and also the less important toy department topics, including the possibility of the NBA shortening the game. Would that make, if they did that, would that make the benches less relevant? The average star plays 32 to 36 minutes a game, still well within the new frame of the game, but there would be fewer minutes for bench players. So depth becomes less relevant, right? Unless teams play their starters less under this new idea. My hunch is the starters would play less. I honestly believe that's what would be more likely to happen. And in a perfect world, it would be, well, you're going to even be better rested, and you don't have to go as long. Just go hard when you're out there. Largely, it'll depend on the coach. I mean, some coaches, including Finchie, don't like playing that many players. Tibbs is notorious for basically wanting to play 7. I think right now, actually, Tibbs is playing more bench than Finchie has been, which is shocking.
Wow.
And keep in mind, Finchie has started playing his bench a little more, but that's flat out because people are missing, right? DiVincenzo is missing. So to a certain extent, you almost have to do some of that. Can Adam Silver change the perception of time? When the Wolves are winning in the 4th and their lead starts dwindling, it feels like no time comes off the clock until we are eventually losing. In exchange, when the Wolves are trying to come back, it feels like the 4th quarter flies by like nothing. Yeah, it will make the dramatic, 20-point comebacks, I assume, a little bit harder. Would that be that big of a loss? I'm not exactly sure if it make that big of a deal. What do you think?
No, I don't really think it'll make that big of a deal. I don't think it's going to demonstrably change the game that we are seeing and viewing as fans, but I do think it'll help because all those minutes accumulate over an 82-game season. I do think it'll help on the injury front, which keeps people invested and keeps eyes glued to the TV and makes it easier for national televised games.
So here's the question. In my profession, I've chided this trend. I hate it. In my profession, even before players bring this up, you'll have media members talk about schedule loss. They'll say, you're playing the second game of a back-to-back on the road. That's a schedule loss almost as no one can possibly expect you to win. I hate it. I think I mentioned this. I don't think you were on with me this day. Just to be a jackass, I went back and checked the 1995-96 Bulls. Admittedly, that's an unfair standard for any other team to be held to. But I was trying to get to a point. And if I did my math right, and I rarely do, the Bulls on 23 occasions had to play back-to-back nights that season. Their record in the second game of the back-to-back was 21-2.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, what's the moral of the story? Not everybody's going to be that good, but I just don't think it ever was in their mind. It was never put in their minds back then. So here's my question. The Wolves are playing back-to-back, right? Different cities, but the team they're playing is awful and injury-riddled. So will we be, but I mean, if we stick with but you still had to get on a plane, private plane, You had to then get on a bus.
Oh, wow.
And be driven all the way to your 5-star hotel in Utah.
Hard times.
Yeah, so if they lose tonight, is it a schedule loss? Are we going to hear the same old excuse? Or are they going to say, well, no, Utah's terrible, so this does not count as a schedule loss?
It absolutely should not be a schedule. They shouldn't even find themselves anywhere near the letter L tonight. This team is one of the worst teams in the NBA, one of the worst defenses in the NBA, and they've lost their last 7 straight games and have only won 3 games at home all season. I'm willing to hear maybe about a scheduled loss if you happen to have to play the Boston Celtics, the Oklahoma City Thunder on the second night of a back-to-back. Maybe I'll listen to you and I'll do the old Hulk Hogan bit and open my ears up to those cries. But I'm not hearing it against the Utah Jazz. It could be the third night, the fourth night of a back-to-back, and you still shouldn't lose to the Utah Jazz.
And back in those days, obviously, there were a lot of back-to-backs. I mean, there were a few games where you play 3 in a row. Yeah, it's rare, but it did happen from time to time, or 3 out of 4, something like that. I mean, if the Wolves had played in Phoenix last night, had to go to Boston tonight, I might listen because that's a hell of a flight. Yeah. But even then, I go, but you're not in middle seat, and you're young, you're having fun, you're having the time of your lives. Just battle, have the mental fortitude to battle through it, or at the very least, don't hand a team an excuse. I don't, and again, I think it's a lot of times more media members anymore than it is even players or coaches. I know Finchie bristles at it. He doesn't like it when it's brought up. And the late great Flip Saunders he used to tell us every time. I tell the players, you literally, if you want to find an excuse, you always can. They're there. You can. Right. It's up to you. But it's not really a game that the best players are interested in playing. In fact, they pride themselves on mastering those situations and say, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Watch this. I'm going to actually play better than I played last night. Now, everybody's not Michael Jordan. I get that. But there's an ethic to it that I'd like to think would more and more players would be interested in trying to hold on to. Top 5, are you ready for another big one today?
Yes, sir.
Got Boffo reviews yesterday, so now
Standard
you've
of
raised
excellence.
the standard, so the question is, can you match yesterday's?
I hope so.
A lot of pressure.
I mean, my whole life is not living up to standard, so.
Well, that's an honest way to look at it.
Yeah, it is.
Any promo, any particular items we're going to get into?
Yes, sir. We got Wolves at Suns recap from last night, and of course, preview of the Jazz game tonight. The Wild are in action on a back-to-back as well. Caitlin Clark and then Terry Rozier. Things are getting
that's a good
scary.
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Terry.
Yeah, that's a good story. Sam Mitchell will join in about 30 minutes.